Hey y'all, welcome back. Now listen, I know what you're thinking. Piley, the woke CIA video's like a week out of style. What are you doing so late to the game, hun? First off, I'm making this video because I've still yet to see the original ad. That's right, you're gonna get an authentic reaction. You might doubt me, you might think I'm lying, but I swear to you that I didn't watch the video at all during the last week. I've seen quotes of its phrases, but I haven't seen it in totality, so I'm excited to finally get a chance to watch it. But more importantly, I'm making this video because, believe it or not, I think the topic it surrounds is more important than just this week. And also, I was moving across the country last week. I probably would have made it then if not for that, so please just cut me some slack. So yeah, for today's video, I'm gonna watch and react to the original video itself, but then I also want to reflect on some of the discourse coming out about the video. Without further ado, let's get into it.
At 17, I had no idea what life would bring, but Sora's sentiment articulated so beautifully how I felt as a daughter of immigrants then.
As a daughter of immigrants, I now have a job where I get to create the conditions that cause more immigrants. What a wonderful arc she's on. It's such a shame that this lady's story has to be tied up in the CIA. Because, you know, if this was a, I don't know, graduation speech or something, I'd be like, oh yeah, that's pretty nice. But it's an ad for the Central American coup installer, so believe it or not, that taints the message just a bit.
I can change a diaper with one hand and console a crying toddler with the other.
I can change a diaper in one hand and give the go-ahead on an airstrike with the other.
I am a cisgender millennial who's been diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder.
See, I see people bringing up that line a lot. What really bugs me there, the video so far is trying to be empowering through embracing that which society tells you to be ashamed of, like being bilingual and all that. How the fuck is millennial a minority group worth mentioning here? Like, yeah, bringing up your neurodivergence is important. Nobody cares that you're a millennial, lady.
A woman whose inflection does not rise at the end of her sentences.
I'm not enough of an expert on people who weren't presidents in American history, but I just wonder if any of the people on the paintings over here committed some sort of horrible atrocity as she's walking by talking about, you can't put me in a box.
I am proud of me. Full stop. My parents left everything.
Okay, there's
they
the
knew
millennial
and
in you.
loved.
She used the phrase full stop.
Know your worth. Command your space. Mija, you're worth it.
All right, that was somehow more devious than I was led to believe. I kind of figured it would be more on its face, like overtly cringe, and I was excited for that. But in reality, it's this really creepy one-to-one, almost like transfer of like a college diversity entrance essay. But it is in the fact that it is so precisely the rhetoric of an otherwise inspirational story that it becomes so dangerous. Like the fact that all of these otherwise pretty fine phrases are being used by the State Department is a pretty worrying sign about how deeply they've been co-opted. So I'm sure at this point we're all fully aware of how cringy this is and how we need to be watchful of powerful people corrupting woke language. It is in fact just like Malcolm X said, as this congressional candidate puts it, of the 37 states that painted BLM on streets, only one of them ended qualified immunity, meaning for the rest of those states, they were just trying to co-opt the movement in an attempt to look like they're doing something and then kill it off by doing nothing. And then of course the famous Malcolm X quote goes, the white man will try to satisfy us with symbolic victories rather than economic equality and real justice. Which brings us right back to this shit. They're trying to appease us with the symbolic victory of the CIA having woke first-generation neurodivergent officers, while not fundamentally changing anything about being the CIA. However, that attempt to co-opt the movement also doesn't mean that these ideas she brings up are worthless, which brings us to Kyle's video.
As long as the rich keep getting richer and the endless wars continue and we keep taking away people's civil liberties and locking them up at Guantanamo Bay, as long as that stuff continues, they'll say whatever you want.
Based Kalinsky so far, but let's see where this goes.
You know what I mean? Like, when people say, I'm brilliant, I'm proud of me, anybody with a functioning brain is going to go, well, you're fucking weird and you need to stay away from me.
That's a really kind of mean way to put it. I don't know, like as somebody that's struggled with insecurities in the past, I don't see anything wrong with like positive reaffirmation. Maybe in the context of this video it comes off as a little weird, but I would never begrudge somebody in their day-to-day life hyping up, you know what, no, I'm good at what I do. That's a bit weird.
It's participation trophy culture, that's what this is.
You sure is sounding a whole lot like a conservative with this specific critique. Because, you know, a second ago he was making the very correct-pilled point that power would co-opt these movements. But now he's talking about people discussing their identities as if they're these whiny little babies that just need to be told they're special snowflakes. But the way he's framing the video here has the potential to, in other circumstances, shame people for even discussing their identity, which feels like it's approaching some dangerous territory.
You know, I'm perfect as I am, but then you say I have generalized anxiety disorder. Wouldn't you feel more perfect, and wouldn't you be happier if you didn't have the generalized anxiety disorder?
Whoa, I see we're jumping straight into ableism territory. Okay, gotta say, not a fan of this, Kyle. As a matter of fact, people are perfectly built as they are. Neurotypical or neurodivergent. It, believe it or not, doesn't matter. He's like blatantly arguing, shouldn't you have a little bit more self-hatred if you're neurodivergent? That's really weird. So yeah, I sat to watch Kyle's video because I think what he's about to say here is a really important moment to reflect on framing.
No actual person in the real world uses that term unironically. In elitist liberal academic circles, they might talk about this shit, but that's not a normal, common person. It's not. There is nobody who's working a 9-to-5 and trying to pay the fucking bills who's also thinking about intersectionality and being cisgender. That doesn't happen.
It is both really odd and, quite frankly, really dangerous to try to define out of existence the very clear reality of marginalized communities that are largely working class. Like, I get the gist of what he's saying, that some of the academic language doesn't translate well. Like, if you remember that poll from a few years ago that found that most Hispanic people didn't want to be called Latinx, even though that's like the academic term. I know he's trying to make that point, that some of the academic language is a bit outside the norm. But the way he says that, like, normal people don't talk about intersectionality or being cisgendered feels like it pretty directly excludes, trans or gender non-conforming people. Like, those folks are readily aware of the ins and outs of not only their own existence, but those of friends they've met in the community. And yeah, some of the words they use to describe themselves indeed do cross over with academic jargon, like cisgender. But the community's familiarity with these terms doesn't make them not working class, and it certainly doesn't make them not normal. Sure, it isn't the common position to know what cisgender is or to be trans or gender nonconforming, but the word normal carries more weight than just denoting that which is common, and he uses it a lot here, so it feels important to analyze the kind of construct we're making when we use the word normal. And I don't think this is just like me word policing him here, because in defining what's normal, he's excluding the communities that are, by way of circumstance, kind of forced to be familiar with these ideas. Case in point, to my understanding, though obviously I am but a Mayo boy, discussions of colorism, a super intersectional topic, happen in African American communities. The same can be said for the different ways that gender impacts these communities, like how being a mom versus a dad versus a daughter versus a son impact their specific struggle in unique but important to talk about ways. Maybe the words they use are different, like maybe they're less academic when they're talking amongst their family, but the intersectional concepts are right there. It's not just a topic that only the ivory-towered academics are talking about. That starts to get into some very Fox News territory, defining regular and working class people as having no interest in these concepts, has the result of defining marginalized working class people out of that working class demographic. And I'm not arguing malicious intent here or anything. I watch Kyle every once in a while, and he seems to have a good head on his shoulders when it comes to this sort of thing. And again, most of this video I agree with when he talks about like how power concentrates itself in co-op social movements. But I just want to take a moment here to warn fellow lefties against this framing, against leaning so hard into the class politics are the only politics we should be talking about, that you lose sight of quite literally the intersections of the matter, that there are working class people who are from these marginalized communities and who are woefully familiar with the concepts. Hey y'all, Editing Room Piley here. Full disclosure, I had originally reacted to a number of other videos talking about the woke CIA clip, ranging all the way from Shoe on Head to Tucker Carlson, but as fun as watching and responding to those videos was, I realized in the 11th hour here that it doesn't really have to do with what I wanted this video to be, especially the Fox News stuff. Like, they go into some batshit crazy directions. Here's a clip of that.
Wait, you're intersectional? So am I. What year were you? Just kidding.
God, Republican comedy is so cringe. Holy shit.
He would have been arrested at the door on a hormone violation. Game over, cover blown!
But interesting as that may be, it doesn't have much to do with what I was trying to say with this video, so there's an extended version up on my Patreon if you would like to see any of that. But on top of that, I saw that while I was editing this video, Kyle dropped a follow-up to his original video. And a number of things that I have to say in this video he doesn't directly respond to there, but to respond to one of his responses, which is a fun sentence to say, he makes this big stink about asserting that people's only problems with his video was that he didn't explicitly say, I mean the multiracial working class. But that tells me his takeaway from the responses was a bit knee-jerk. Like, I guess speaking for myself here, I can't speak for other content creators. My problem with his assertions of normal and all that isn't that he didn't expressly say normal includes black people too. It's that the definition he's trying to make of normality implicitly excludes a number of communities. But the solution to that problem isn't clarifying people of color are included too. The proper solution is to be careful about how you're defining normality. And also, after watching his video, I wanted to make sure to clarify, this is not a Kyle call-out post necessarily. I think he does some good work. I especially think he's more principled against fraudulent right-wingers than some of these other anti-woke lefties like your Jimmy Dores of the world. So this is far from a cancellation video or anything like that. I just wanted to bring attention to the shaky endpoint that trying to define normal in this way could lead to if not checked. But with that all out of the way, let's get back to the conclusion. Intersectionality and diversity are fine. One might even call them good. There's a virtue to them on their own, I would say. And while it's true that the power structures in this country will inevitably co-opt basically every progressive social movement, we should not use this moment to disparage diversity and all that. And we should especially be careful of, as Kyle does in this video, defining normal people by their relative distance from diversity, which ignores the historical fact that a lot of these identities are inextricably tied to being working class, unfortunately. And perhaps more importantly, and I really don't want to get away from this, intersectionality and diversity is not only good, it's also necessary. Like, several past movements have fallen apart because they didn't embrace diversity or intersectionality. Like, second wave feminism really struggled to reach to other parts of the identity spectrum that weren't explicitly like middle class or rich white ladies. And eventually that movement ran its course. Similarly, part of the reason it seems the labor movement fell apart was fucking racism. Like, the white people weren't able to properly view the social struggle as a unified one, and they got too divided by literal white supremacy. I'm trying to think of the right word here, but it's as simple as that. So sure, we can have a discussion here or there about if a certain way of talking about diversity is good optics or whatever, but we cannot get away from the fundamental reality that if we want to win, we need diversity. Now clearly this iteration of identity politics has run its course, evidenced by the video. I really don't want to get away from that or make it sound like I'm in favor of that. But that doesn't make a better form of diversity any less than absolutely necessary for a successful future. So yeah, that's about all I have to say for this video. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to toss me a like and subscribe down below. But if you really want to help me out, you can join me over on Patreon. Patrons get access to exclusive behind-the-scenes content, like early versions of every video, and exclusive Patreon-only videos. Plus, if you join the Piley Benton's Biggest Boys tier, you get your name read off at the end of every video, which I am about to do once I pull up the names. Zoth, Sean Locke, Revo Pregame, Nilic Elites, Floof Pants, and Kerman Ferd. So if you want to hear your lovely name read off at the end of every video, be sure to join me on this specific tier. Thanks much, everyone, and I'll see you next time.